Welcome to Democracy-ish. I'm Danielle Moodie.
And I'm Wajahat Ali. And Danielle, I don't think I can go on because I saw Latinos and Puerto Ricans and Black and brown people shaking their butt. I saw Jessica Alba, who I love since a child. And I also saw I saw Benito Bad Bunny, and I didn't hear English during the Super Bowl. So everything is over, and I think it's time. It's a wrap. I got to leave to another country. I don't know how I'll survive. I'm too sensitive. How about you?
I'm good. And I just want to tell everybody that as I'm watching the Super Bowl, who is working and texting me at the same time? Wajahat Ali. And I'm like, sir, the Super Bowl is on.
That's the exact quote. He goes, sir, watch the Super Bowl. Come back to me later.
Super Bowl and leave me alone.
That's an exact quote. I'm like, I got some good
I got some good stuff for tomorrow. And I'm like, sir, it's the Super Bowl. I'm like 3 glasses of wine in. Anyway, so folks, we have a great show for you all today. We will talk about the Super Bowl. We will talk about all of the good cultural moments, what it means, what it signaled, what we thought was going to happen versus what did happen. And but before we do, we have a fantastic guest that Wajahat is going to introduce that is going to unpack a lot of the connections that we talked about on Friday with regard to Peter Thiel's web and how that intersects with Jeffrey Epstein's web and how that intersects with, world domination and the end of human existence and, the uplifting of sex traffickers, etc. So Waj, without further ado, please.
Yeah, Dr. Nafeez Ahmed, I've known him for many years, and I'm going to give Nafeez a compliment. I've actually said this to his face. Nafeez is the guy who figures out the plot before anybody else. And in the opening 10 minutes of Bourne Identity, he's the one who tries to tell Jason Bourne or James Bond, this is a supervillain plot. I figured it out. In the 80s, he would have the floppy disk. In the 90s, he would have the CD. Now would he have the thumb drive? And he goes like, meet me in the London Underground. And then like, right before he's about to hand over the floppy disk and the CD, a sniper takes him out. And his last words are like, trust me,
it's all here.
So Nafeez is that guy, but thankfully he's alive. Nafeez Ahmed is a researcher. He's a journalist. And Nafeez wrote this fantastic book last year, and I had him on the left called the Alt-Reich, the network war to destroy democracy from within, the Alt-Reich, which talks about all these perverse psychotic supervillains that we've talked often about on the left hook and Democracy-ish. And now we know that these Silicon Valley bros were intimately tied to Epstein, and not just tied to Epstein and Trump. Folks, it's trending right now in Blue Sky. We called it. What's happening in Europe is finally going to bubble over here. People are finally paying attention because the Epstein scandal is rolling heads in Europe, Danielle. They're actually, holding these people accountable to the point where Starmer's government might fall. So the person who's been on top of this as of 2 weeks ago was Nafeez, and he wrote a fantastic piece that we'll link to later in a write-up in the Byline Times. He's a director of investigations. Nafeez, hopefully I gave you, what did I miss, Nafeez? Also, he plays a meaningful part.
Yeah, I was a bit worried about the sniper thing.
He's like, how's this going to end?
Not just yet.
But, Nafeez, before we begin, because we're going to talk about Epstein and Europe and Palantir, but what's common to us isn't common to everyone. Right? So let's just go step by step. You wrote this book called The Alt-Reich. Talk to us about this network, this broligarch network that exists that now we know is intimately tied to Epstein. Why'd you call it the Alt-Reich? Who's in it? What's their endgame?
So the Alt-Reich is, it's a kind of, obviously it's a play on the alt-right, which is that term alternative right, neo-Nazi Richard Spencer, maybe about a decade ago or so, something like that, maybe a bit longer. He basically was like, we should rebrand the far right. Let's call ourselves the alternative right. Steve Bannon and those lot kind of ran with it. And of course, there's the Third Reich, which we all know about, which is what happened with Nazi Germany in the 1930s and so on and so forth. So that's why I blended the two, but not as just a play on words for its own sake to kind of be kooky and clever, but because the thing that really alarmed me the most when looking at the alternative right and how it's been evolving and kind of moving into the center ground, is that many of these folks are actually card-carrying Nazis. And I'm not saying the whole movement is Nazis, but some of the most powerful kind of networks in this network of networks are actually Nazis. And so my book traces the kind of evolution of this network as a global phenomenon. It starts in the 1930s. And there was a foundation called the Pioneer Fund, based in New York, which was in contact with kind of German eugenicists and Nazi scientists. And they had this kind of communication and stuff like that. And what's really disturbing about this whole story is that a story which starts in the 1930s and, you know, the terrible things that happened in Germany, and then many of those ideas kind of inspiring people in the United States, people who were upset with the existence of Black people, and the fact that Black people wanted to have civil rights and things like that. And they also didn't like Jews and all this kind of stuff. That same organization has continued to have this huge influence and a growing influence on the thinking of the right wing. And it started off as being a thinking of the far right, but increasingly it's become the center right. And, you know, it started off with funding papers, academic papers at universities in America on eugenics and the idea that there is a black and white IQ divide on racial grounds and things like that. And it evolved into those ideas then, which were very much grounded in this fundamentally Nazi ideology, then being repackaged and repackaged and repackaged and mainstreamed, and people wrote books about this stuff. People like Charles Murray came along, wrote The Bell Curve, you know, had a big
Harvard
flash. Yeah. And what I found was that even though many kind of mainstream conservatives would not kind of put their hand up and say, yeah, I love this, I believe this, I kept finding that they kept reading this stuff. They kept reading Charles Murray. They kept reading The Bell Curve. And you're finding his stuff cited in different think tanks and institutions. And then you're looking at the big conservative funders. And suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute. The same funder that was backing Charles Murray, like the Bradley Foundation, funds like all the mainstream conservative groups, and is also the one funding the insurrectionists who denied the 2020 elections, and they're also the ones who are funding Project 2025. And no wonder Project 2025 just looks like it came out of the Nazi playbook, because it actually did. So that's the story that the book tells. It kind of pieces it all together and looks at all the different kind of players in this network and how essentially they've become radicalized over time. Like you see people, you know, maybe 20 years ago didn't have these views, but you can actually see kind of year by year, you know, half a decade, then another decade goes, and these ideas are becoming more mainstream, they're becoming more taken up, to the point where at one point in 2008, Charles Murray, he gets an award at the American Enterprise Institute. They did this annual award ceremony for major conservatives, and every conservative luminary was there. Like all the mainstream people, even people that are now anti-Trumpers, were in that room. And he just gave a massive speech about how he believed that basically, he talked about the cognitive elite, which basically is a euphemism for the white intellectual minority, which he thinks is eugenically kind of endowed and therefore is going to be in charge. And he just openly spoke about this stuff. And everyone's just listening and whining and dining, and they're listening to this stuff. And it's just the way it is. It's just, there's Charles Murray, a eugenicist, talking about how this is the reality. And everyone's just standing there listening and saying, okay, fine. That kind of normalization has led us to this moment where we get to the broligarchy, where the Silicon Valley networks have also gone through a similar type of radicalization process. And I think one of the kind of key transmission people that we should focus on is this character, Curtis Yarvin, who is this kind of interesting transmission belt between that kind of old school eugenics and this new kind of techno-fascist, kind of techno-utopian kind of ideology of how to remake the world. So Curtis Yarvin, you look into him and he's this strange blogger, kind of a nobody, computer scientist guy. He sets up this kind of weird little project that Peter Thiel decides to invest in. And from then on, what we know is that he then had the ear of Peter Thiel. He's spoken about how him and Peter Thiel would sit together and have chats and talk about everything. And then you go and look at what Curtis Yarvin was writing since around 2008 onwards. First of all, under this anonymous blog, the Mencius Mold blog. And then after that, he kind of, the mask was off. I think Trump came into power, mask was off, and he thought, I'll just come out and it's fine. And in that, he talks very, very openly. And again, it's open, but it's also coded. He uses kind of weird language and stuff. But you can read it between the lines, and it is pretty clear. And he basically thinks that the fundamental problem of everything is that there is a biological hierarchy, and there is a majority of darker-skinned, inferior people, and he uses different language to. He calls them swarthy people. Swarthy is just.
And this is who?
This is Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin, who is a technology blogger and kind of tech bro, small-time tech bro, but funded by Peter Thiel.
Who is followed by Nafeez. Can we tell everyone? JD Vance, the vice president, follows him online.
Follows him online, and not just that. In fact, there are several senior Trump administration officials in the administration right now. Michael Anton, who's at the State Department, many other people who have openly said they really love what this guy is saying. This is really interesting. They follow him. They have these discussions about what he's been saying. All of the major Silicon Valley tech bros also have spoken about how they've read Curtis Yarvin. So not just Peter Thiel, but also people like Mark Andreessen, for instance, David Sachs. So most of them, and they kind of circulate his ideas. So understanding what he's saying gives us a window into what these guys are thinking. And I think there's kind of 2 or 3 key things to take away. That what is he saying? First of all, biological hierarchy, too many inferior brown and black people. That's the global majority, right? He thinks democracy. The second point is that democracy is the vector that is giving these people power. So that's why,
as was the point, right? Like
exactly.
in modern democracy. I mean, it wasn't the founding fathers of this country's idea, right? Black people and women were still property. But as we move right into the 20th century, into the 21st century, this idea was that democracy was for and by all people, not just like this. So so what I'm hearing is that their issue with democracy is that it provides the people that they believe are inferior with too much power and access.
Exactly. And that's why Curtis Yarvin was actually really, he's critical of the civil rights movement. He thinks that he talks about, I mean, it's actually really horrendous. And I mean, at this point, I should say, this stuff is triggering. It's actually that the language is disgusting. He talks about the, and I'm going to use the slur, racial slur, the American Negro problem. And he openly talks about this idea. And it's quite horrific, actually, the way he kind of openly dehumanizes black people, and specifically, but black Americans, and essentially talks about them like they're just kind of this subhuman species, and says they had to be managed
like apes, for instance. Like,
I mean,
like when
pretty much he won't say, oh, they are like apes, but he will talk about this, like, I mean, what kind of language is that? The American Negro. He talks about, he actually says it. He doesn't even say, he's deliberately dehumanizing and talking about a group of people as if they are an it. There's something different, not the same as human. We can talk about them in different categories. And then he says, essentially this it was better off under slavery, better off pre-civil rights.
Charlie Kirk said that also.
Right. So Charlie Kirk said that. Nick Fuentes has said that. Donald Trump most recently said, what about the Civil Rights Act? That it did a real disservice to white people. Like, it did some good things, but a real disservice to white people. And then a few weeks later turns Michelle Obama and Barack Obama into apes. And like,
Exactly.
I'm just like, I'm listening to you and I'm here. And it's just like, I want people to be able to see the thread of, as you're stating these things, this ideology, which is not new. He didn't create it. Yarvin is literally doing copycat bullshit that has been done since the beginning of founding of this country, in like 250 years, 400 years of white nationalist supremacist belief system, right? He's just like, oh, let's add technology to it. Let's add this new layer to it. But it's the same things that we've been talking about.
But Danielle,
Exactly.
it's even dumber. Curtis is even dumber than that. That's what makes it even that much more painful. I'll add one more thing before Nafeez will continue. As we find out from the Epstein files, and just to connect the dots, and Nafeez, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I hope this is helpful for our audience. We see a lot of hearts, so it is. Peter Thiel, who's the one who made Curtis Yarvin mainstream in the Epstein files, what we just saw 10 years ago, Peter Thiel was emailing Epstein saying, you know what the problem was when women and people of color were given the vote.
Yep. Yeah. So society for them started to go backwards in the 1920s, and then just evolved in the 60s with the Civil Rights Act. Got it.
Yeah, which is, so you're reading this stuff, and it's like some of the stuff that Yarvin is writing is like this really weird, turgid kind of and pseudo academic exploration of 19th century Victorian politics. And then going even further back and saying that, things were really great in the feudal times. It's really weird. Like, it's really, really strange. But there's this glorification of essentially raw power. And the idea that there's been this trajectory of, again, the only reason you would believe something like this is if you fundamentally think, that biological racial hierarchies are real. Because then you think, oh, there's too many inferior groups of people now involved in politics, and that's what's bad. That's the problem, and so that's why it's not an accident. We're looking at some of this crazy stuff that Trump is doing. This, since he's come in, there's been this. We've hit this inflection point where, whether it's slavery, civil rights, talking about Black people in general, the assault on DEI. And the complete demonization and the equation of diversity with kind of like this kind of evil, this idea that diversity itself is some sort of corruption that has to be stamped out. These are not things that have just come out of nowhere.
Right.
They're part of this political ideology that's been developing over time. And you actually see it laid out in black and white in what Curtis Yarvin describes. And it's quite extraordinary because some of the things that Trump did were things that he actually he'd said that should be done years earlier. I mean, like, for instance, apart from the DEI stuff, which was kind of obvious, and he was railing against it and saying, this is what is destroying America as DEI. But he was also saying, we need to just essentially gut the civil service. So in America, that means just get rid of, he called it rage. Retire all government employees. That came from Yarvin. And who was reading Yarvin? J.D. Vance was reading Yarvin. So you could see these ideas were seeping in. And, and then we can see how when Project 2025 was put together and they got all these teams of different people, they were channeling these crazy ideas and thinking, well, how do we actually execute these ideas? And then came up with this kind of really insane but granular level plan to completely remake the American system. But I think the third thing that's really important is that, apart from the fact that it's pretty clear that Curtis Yarvin actually wants, his whole thing is, we need to get rid of democracy. Democracy is a problem. And it's become a bit of an interesting fad. Like, Curtis Yarvin came over to the UK, he spoke at some kind of posh literary festivals, was interviewed by kind of liberals, and it was all a bit of a joke, this idea that Curtis Yarvin thinks we should bring the monarchy back. A lot of Brits thought that was quite funny because obviously we have a monarchy. No one really wants the monarchy to actually rule. We all know, the monarchy, they're kind of bit annoying. People have this, kind of conflict about why they're there. But they've got Curtis Yarvin talking about the monarchy. So it was a bit of a joke. But what they're not looking at is the whole broader program of what he's been saying. And he lays this out in kind of 2 essays that he wrote a few years ago, where he actually explicitly says, and he channels a lot of other ideologues on this, but he explicitly says that it's not just about one country. We need to essentially completely destroy national sovereignty all over the world and smash these democracies and replace them with something else. And what he calls that patchwork. And patchwork is a network of mini sovereignties, which are basically controlled by corporate oligarchs, people like Peter Thiel. And, he lays it all out and says, you've got all these rich people with they kind of come in as shareholders of these sovereignties, and they run it without any kind of
laws,
kind of recognition of what. Yeah, I mean, they make the laws without regard for the residents' opinions. They decide what goes, and they have absolute power. And in his view, if you run everything on the basis of profit, then automatically you're going to avoid problems. Things will be naturally improved. So I think what's really interesting is that why is it that Silicon Valley kind of tech bros have been radicalized and kind of now absorbing this idea is because obviously we're looking at things that are going on in the world, whether it's energy issues, climate change, all this other stuff. The system that we have is breaking down. But what we're seeing is that these guys who are running the show, they're starting to realize that if you actually try to solve the system genuinely, it's a transformation. It's a transformation that fundamentally challenges their power. It challenges billionaire oligarchy. It challenges those structures of unaccountability. And they're starting to realize that we can't allow that to happen.
Right.
But so what do we do? So they've
destroy everything.
They've gone for this. Things are going to get bad. So what we should do is just literally grab as much as we can, smash and grab, and remake it the way we want to remake it. It's a
well, Nafeez, to your point, I mean, just to connect the dots real quick, Danielle, and I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
But just so, because if what's common to us isn't common to everyone, we've been talking about this for a while. How does this connect to Epstein and Thiel and everything what we're watching? Is that Epstein, according to the latest dump about 15 years ago, literally said, I want a new world order, return to tribalism, right? Crash and destroy everything, remake it. He was looking into crypto. He was looking into online gaming. He was looking into right-wing culture. He tried to have a meeting with Putin. He says, destroy the post-World War II order, destroy rules-based order, destroy accountability, right? And then let's remake it in our image, where we will be allowed to indulge in our appetites. For Epstein, it was pedophilia. For many of these people, it was pedophilia, right? But essentially, we could do everything we want. Crypto destabilizes the financial markets, right? Right-wing disinformation. People don't know what's up, what's down, what's truth. Democracy, you make it unattractive. You replace it with the strong man, and voila. And then the person that met with Epstein again and again and again was Peter Thiel. And then we found out in 2015, Nafeez, I'm sure you saw this email that came out that Epstein bragged about the wild party that he had with Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg. Can you connect Epstein to this, the Reich?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what's extraordinary with the Epstein files is the extent to which someone like Epstein was able to completely kind of embed himself in these networks. And I think what's become clear to me, and we've done some interesting stories on his connection to Silicon Valley and all of this stuff. And what's really interesting to me is the complete silence from a lot of these people about what was really going on. So let's just focus on Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel, as of about a year ago, was going around saying, Epstein didn't really know him, had no idea what his agenda was, blah, 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 blah. And then, going around giving speeches suggesting that talking about the Epstein problem and giving his view of what it means, and then talking about the Antichrist and other weird things. Now we're looking at the files. And in 2014, these guys were buddies. And it actually went further than that. But in 2014, we find Peter Thiel is having a really nice, chummy chat with Epstein about investment opportunities. And you can actually see that there's loads of familiarity here. These guys have been chatting for a while privately. They kind of seem to really know each other. You look at the context of these emails, and Jeffrey Epstein is talking to other people about how he knows Thiel, and Thiel knows him really well, and blah 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 blah. And then you find that actually it's true. So in late 2014, there's this extraordinary exchange between Peter Thiel, his principals at a firm called Valor Ventures, which is a massive billion-dollar investment firm in kind of focusing on financial technology and disruptive technologies. It's made Thiel a lot of money, and it also made Epstein a lot of money. And in fact, his investments in Valor Ventures are the biggest kind of reason why Epstein's estate is now valued so high, like several hundred million. It's all due to Valor Ventures. So he had this in 2014. They're talking about let's do something together. So Peter Thiel emails his buddies at this venture firm, and he says, "Hey guys, you need to meet my friend Jeffrey Epstein. Let's hit it up." And he says, Epstein, we're looking at something like 10 or 20 million to drop in there. And Epstein's like, "Yeah, sounds cool, man." I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, yeah, 10, 20 million. What's that? Drop in the ocean. And then they arrange to meet at Epstein's house. So these two guys who work for Peter Thiel, they go and meet Epstein at his house in I think it's December 2014. And so why did I start looking into this particular thing?
Mm-hmm.
Is actually something else, right? Valor Ventures came to our attention because we stumbled upon an email conversation between Jeffrey Epstein, Ehud Barak. Now, in case people aren't aware, there's been a lot of great stories. Dropsite News has probably been doing some of the best work on this, but they basically exposed that Jeffrey Epstein was hanging out with the former Israeli prime minister and defense minister and intelligence chief Ehud Barak for several years on all sorts of crazy stuff. Geopolitics, intrigue, kind of helping Mossad do the stuff in Syria. But one of the things he was helping him with was in business, and they decided to work together on an Israeli cyber tech firm that would help do all sorts of surveillance stuff. And so they were working together on that. That was their little venture, the Epstein Ehud Barak venture. It was called Reporty. Later on, it changed its name to Carbine. So we found this email from 2016 where Ehud Barak emails a German technology investor. Her name was Nicole Junkermann. She's worth millions and is also very weird and kind of was also friends with Epstein. Emails Nicole Junkermann and says, "Why don't you come to this meeting that we're having with our colleagues at this firm, Valor Ventures? Me and Epstein, me and Jeff, we're going to pitch our thing. And we'd love you to be there." And it's a new investment fund owned by Jeffrey and Peter Thiel. And this is really interesting because it's a private email. It's copied to Epstein. And Nicole Junkermann is like a serious player. Like, she's not just an idiot. And she's also close friends with Epstein. And in fact, so when we went and dug into this, so I was like, who the hell is Valor Ventures? Let me find out more. So I'm going into the files and searching them up. Hundreds of documents come up. And there are all of these internal communications involving Valor Ventures, Epstein, Thiel, and so on and so forth. And it all starts in 2014. So it turns out Nicole Junkermann, who they're talking about, she actually went to that meeting in 2014. So Epstein is talking to her that, "I'm going to meet these guys, Peter Thiel." And she's like, "Oh, I really want to meet Peter Thiel," and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, "Can I come? Can I come to this meeting in New York?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, come along." So she obviously goes to this thing. So she actually knows these guys. She knows who Valor Ventures is. So this is really strange, right? So we've now got this email from Ehud Barak, who's essentially Epstein's business partner. And they're going to pitch to Valor Ventures saying Peter Thiel and Epstein own this fund together. So that's when we dug into all these emails and we found, okay, so what we found is that on paper, what you can show is that Epstein basically became a limited partner investor in a Valor Ventures fund. So in 2015, he puts in, exactly as he promised, about $15 million, which is a pretty huge sum of money to put straight in just like that. And it's kind of consistent with the idea that maybe he was an owner. However, when we went to Peter Thiel and Valor Ventures and everyone for comment, they basically were like, no. I mean, and it got kind of hairy, by the way. They threatened us with legal action. They said this is defamation, blah, 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 blah. And then we kind of dug out all the documents and we were like, well, Ehud Barak said he's an owner. And then you've got all of these documents showing that he's a limited business, kind of limited partner investor, which does actually give him a share ownership. Although, venture capital is structured in such a way that you're kind of more of a passive investor. But when we looked at the emails, and he wasn't just sitting there waiting for his profits. He kept emailing these guys and they kept emailing him. So in 2016, Ehud Barak and them are going to Valor and just saying, we want to pitch you this idea. Will you invest? In the end, they didn't invest directly. The following year, Thiel's Founders Fund invests in their joint venture.
So,
right?
Nafeez,
So let me ask, because I want to ask this, right? Because I think that this is all like incredibly interesting and very in depth. Is that what do you think is the reason why there was this kind of intricacy going on with the investments that were happening? Because in my mind, I'm thinking from Epstein's perspective of why he's dropping $15 million into this venture. Is it in the hopes that he's going to be able to wash his money in some type of way, right? Like the thing that we are learning about Jeffrey Epstein is that his tentacles were very long and went into a lot of different businesses with a lot of different powerful people. He was on the ground in building up a lot of different ventures. And in my understanding, it was so that he could figure out ways to operate his black market sex trafficking operation in broad daylight, but through these different intricate businesses as other people who are not necessarily sex traffickers, but he's able to layer on top of what it is that they're doing. Am I right?
Well, and Nafeez, before you say anything, I just want to add on to what you were saying, Danielle, is what Nafeez is telling us, and he wouldn't be telling us if he didn't have the documents, is that he wasn't a convicted pedophile, was in business with Ehud Barak and Peter Thiel.
Right.
Like,
so,
they weren't,
but I'm like,
they didn't even just know each other. They were in business
together. So, like, again, is this right about the layering of the businesses that are happening? Like, he's able to kind of wash his money and gain respectability through these business ventures, and these other folks are able also to navigate in this kind of black market space.
I mean, it's really, when you start looking into what was going on, it's really weird. I would say the things that become clear, and I think, with Jahad, when you mentioned the fact that these guys seem to share certain ideas, they were riffing off them. Peter Thiel was like, yeah, I hate democracy, people of color, blah, 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 women, blah, 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 and then kind of Epstein kind of seems to agree. And then also the same thing, destroy the world financial system, let's get in cryptocurrency, these kind of ties with rogue states like Russia or Israel. So I think it's difficult to understand exactly what was going on. What is very clear is that Epstein was almost operating like some kind of a triple, quadruple agent. Like, I don't know what he was doing, but he had, without a doubt, kind of intimate, high-level connections with kind of
everyone,
intelligence agents, multiple intelligence agencies, multiple government officials, and he had deliberately cultivated that. One of the other things that's kind of interesting is that he spent like a decade or so traveling to Russia, in and out of Russia, in and out of Russia, in and out of Russia, and it became clear that he was essentially building up a network of a sex trafficking network. And he was importing Russian women and Russian girls and children, into wherever he was doing this, and he kind of built this infrastructure. It's difficult to imagine that he could have done that without the approval of Russian
without government
services or knowledge at some level, right? And it's this, and it cuts both ways as well. Like I think there's a couple of FBI reports that have come out. There are these FBI reports based on confidential human sources, CHS. You have to be really careful with those kind of documents. A lot of people are flying these around saying, "Oh, this is what it means. It means this. It means this." The thing with those is that they're based on sources that we can't verify. Like what happens with that is that the FBI will get information from a source, and they'll get that. They'll write the report out. That report gets filed. So we don't know exactly what the kind of veracity of some of those reports are. We've got to be careful. We can't just say, "Is an FBI report from this in the files? It must be true." But that doesn't mean we should
not in the world we live in now. That's I mean, never in the world that we lived in, to be honest.
Exactly,
but...
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that at the same time, we shouldn't. That doesn't mean we should reject them and throw them out. This is data. These are things we should consider. And some of the things that they were saying, there's one report from what seems like some sort of intelligence operative who appears to be infiltrating this network and reporting to the FBI. They're a source that the FBI says that they were in Epstein's circle. They seem to have had some visibility and access to him, and they're saying that they think that he's a Mossad agent. Consistent, his behavior seems to be like that. They also note his connections with senior Russian officials, but they also say that it seems that he appears to have he also appears to be under a lot of scrutiny from U.S. intelligence. And U.S. intelligence seems to be well aware of a lot of the activities that he's been involved in. And then it does also lead us to another question, which is, you look at all of this stuff that's been piling up in these millions of documents, all of these inquiries and investigations and intelligence reports, and all of this stuff, much of it not been investigated. This including some of those absolutely horrific reports from witnesses describing things that Trump and other accomplices and other Silicon Valley people and so on and so forth were doing to children. Really, really graphic.
Well, Nafeez, it goes back to 1996. That's when we learned was the first FBI report where Maria Farmer mentioned to the FBI that this man is a pedophile. So the first reporting and that's what we know. So it goes back 30 years. And they didn't do anything. And then
no one did anything. And this is what's extraordinary about this.
Sweetheart deal.
As much as this is clearly a bipartisan problem. This is not just, definitely guy in the White House right now is in the thick of it, but there's clearly a bipartisan problem that's been continuing from government to government. The people sitting on these investigations, sitting on these inquiries, nothing happening. And now, to add insult to injury, Donald Trump coming out and, the most horrific, there's a female journalist asking him a question about the victims.
Caitlin
and then him saying to her, you should smile. Why aren't you smiling? And then saying, this is over. This story is finished. No one wants to investigate, but you have all of this, in a serious world. When you have allegations of this nature, the simple, normal response is you've got these things that have to be investigated.
Right, but not if everyone.
We're not going to say you're guilty, but investigate.
Everybody, but this is the thing, and I think that this is what is so fascinating about the research that you have done and the connections that you've been making, is the fact that what we have, as more and more information has come out just over the last year and a few months, is that everyone is complicit. Everyone is implicated. There isn't a nation state or a powerful person that is not an accomplice to this. And we're talking about 30 years worth of this information. I'm curious as to your thoughts, though. What happens in 2019 that this has been going on across multiple administrations in this country, across multiple administrations, different PMs in the UK, all of this is happening, right? And then somehow, for whatever reason, it comes to a crux in 2019 with the death of Jeffrey Epstein. And what happens that all of this has been running essentially like clockwork for 3 decades, that we reached this kind of fever pitch in 2019?
Nafeez, before you answer that, can I just, to your point, Danielle, I just want to share this quote, and I know this quote, and then Nafeez, you take it away, just to show you the breadth of what Danielle was talking about and how it isn't just America, right? This quote, I'm sure it's gone viral in the UK. I know you've seen it, the LBC quote. And I just want to quote this woman. She actually said this. Lady Victoria Hervey, ex-girlfriend of former Prince Andrew, tells the LBC host, London's, I think what it's called, the British Conversation, right, that not being named in the Epstein files is an insult. If you're not in those files, you are a bit of a loser. That's an exact quote, Daniel.
Oh, no, I have it.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And I think that's what you're looking at. I think what we're getting a glimpse of with these files is exactly that it wasn't just about Epstein. And I think that's what's starting to become clear. And that's what's so difficult about this, is that Epstein could not have done what he did without an entire infrastructure. And let's just look at this. Like, no one's been prosecuted. No one's been charged. Even when he did his, famously his plea deal. Now we know, we've been mining over what the hell happened with his plea deal. And we know that his plea deal was all about protection. I mean, he signed that deal and he got immunity for himself and his co-conspirators. And that's kind of been the playbook for this whole thing. And I think that's why there's been this really kind of strange kind of silence. Like, I mean, one of the things that I've seen, and I'm actually working on a story. I did a previous story at the end of last year when we had the first batch of files, and it's only got a little bit deeper. And now what's clear is that Epstein was embedded in the Silicon Valley networks. People like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all of these luminaries that we know, right, who are in charge of big tech, from 2009, so after his conviction, and including before his conviction, but let's start with 2009 to 2018. I've seen files where he's copied into emails with these luminaries. He's part of the elite network. They all know him. And that's what's not coming out. These guys are embarrassed. I found an email that
They're not embarrassed.
Larry Page and Sergey Brin, co-founders of Google, hanging out at his house in 2014. They went to Epstein's house. Like, no one knows that yet, right? Just found the email just the other day. That's what we're talking about. This was an incestuous relationship.
Well, Nafeez, Reid Hoffman was there.
Reid Hoffman, yeah.
Gross emails. Reid Hoffman, the liberal. Elon Musk.
He's actually come out recently and saying that, maybe Trump should calm down a bit. It's like, yeah, dude, but we can see you in the files.
It's just like, but this is the thing. This is the thing that I continue to say. For some of them in the network, this is a smash and grab job, right? Which is to get as much money because they're so insatiable and so fucking greedy. Like that, for some of them, it's just about amassing. For others, it is obviously based on whatever their intellectualized fucking racism, right? Like whatever, like it is that, and that being like the end game. All of them want to be able to live in a society of fiefdom, I think, because then you're being served. That's what a fiefdom was, is that in a democracy, whether or not I'm tied to a corporation or I'm a sovereign, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Like I am tending to my own needs, and the corporation and or my business is a means to an end for myself. But they don't want self-sovereignty, right? They actually want servitude. And while they believe that there is this racialized hierarchy of servitude, what actually is getting caught up in it is that they believe that they are above everyone. Like, I don't think, Nafeez, that they even see us, and not even us meaning people of color, but I mean us as people that have less economic status as them, as being human. So when we're kind of looking at this conglomerate, right, of for my favorite word, fuckery, this conglomerate of fuckery, right? Like everyone has their vested interest, but at the core of it, it really is that they don't see us as human, and that they want to be able to run because they think that they are like, for some, they believe that they are the chosen people, right? Like this is emperor type shit, right? It's not. And I say that because I want people to understand, like, it is different tools and a different time, but it's the same empire, manifest destiny, colonized mentality of like who has the rightful, who is the rightful heir to the throne, and the throne now just being world power and domination. It's always been that, whether you sending out pirates and explorers or etc. So they're these, they see themselves, we see them as techno-fascists, but they really see themselves as the next iteration of explorer, right? And like, and that the people
Colonizer,
began
colonizers,
but they don't see themselves, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying we see them as colonizers because we're coming from it, from that framework. They see themselves as the new explorers, right? So don't trouble me with your laws. I know that I'm polluting, I know that I'm destroying X, Y, and Z, but like AI wash, like who cares if it wipes out humanity?
I'm the modern Columbus. I will find China in America and discover something that's already been there, and in the process kill everyone.
I mean,
they've spoken about this stuff. So I mean, there's a conversation between Epstein and this one of these leading AI pioneers, and it's part of, he's a member of this Edge Foundation network of scientists, tech leaders, including Jeff Bezos and all these lot who kept going to this thing all the time. And in this conversation, they're talking about climate culling. They're talking about, well, maybe climate change is just like a forest fire. You just clear out the debris and openly talking about it. And there's lots of other racialized stuff in there. But Epstein was basically channeling what you see with the Epstein files is almost like it's a glimpse of it's a little window, and it's not just about Epstein. That's the key thing. You realize that Epstein's actually a window into this elite that you're talking about, Danielle. It's everyone's getting obsessed with Epstein as the criminal, right? And in a way, that's what they want us to take away. Oh, it's just Epstein.
Because then you can like obfuscate like responsibility. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if Epstein, and then if he's made the key demon in all of this and he's dead, well, then hasn't justice really just already found its way? It'll get him on the other side.
Yeah, it's over. It's finished. We don't need it. It's an old story. Whereas what we're really seeing is that Epstein was part of this system, and it was a key node in that system. And a lot of these things that you're talking about were ideas that he actually kind of curated. And obviously, it wasn't just him. There were many other people who were also co-curating with him. But when you look at what he did, he like brought together scientists who were highly materialist. That advocated a very specific reductionist, materialist view of the world. And, I'm not saying that because I'm saying you have to believe in a religion or believe in a spiritual worldview, but I'm saying it because he actually specifically selected people that have articulated a very specific type of worldview where there's no kind of sense for ethical thinking. It's just it's highly reductionist. And then like as an example, one of these guys, Lawrence Krauss, who was going along to these Epstein things, and Epstein funded his hyper atheist project. It's called the Origins Project at Arizona University. It turns out Lawrence Krauss was also, he had to leave his university under allegations of sexual harassment. And you look at the emails and they're kind of all helping each other and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't really give a shit whether you're an atheist or a theist, but you're basically just a dickhead. And a criminal.
Well, Nafeez, can I ask you this in the interest of time? And because you've done fantastic reporting and now it's finally bubbling up in the US, I knew it would be a week late. Speaking about Epstein being a node, speaking about how he's connected, not just to Israel and Russia and the Silicon Valley, but how this goes deeper. how we're talking about an Epstein class, a global network, right? And that people need to be held accountable. The one positive is that the only place where I see some heads being rolled right now is the UK. Mandelson, McSweeney, you'll explain these names to people. But talk to us about what's happening in UK, because I think it literally is a fantastic microcosm of everything you've said. The node, how it connects to powerful people, how it's not just Epstein, people must be held accountable, and the difference between Europe and how it's handling the Epstein files versus the absolute mouse farts in America, where there's nothing happening, no accountability, nada, it's not me, oh, he's dead, not me, oh, what, I'm in the files, I had no idea. Can you just connect to us what's happening in UK, because I think the story is going to explode this week.
So some of the listeners might be aware that when the Labour government came in under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, they appointed a particular guy to be our ambassador. His name is Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson is like a long time.
Just here's a photo of him in the Epstein files, half naked. Just
with a girl, with an Epstein girl.
Yeah,
there you go. I mean,
totally normal.
Not very nice to look at.
Nope.
So Peter Mandelson is so we know him very well here in the UK. He's this kind of Labour veteran. He was there during the Blair years. Tony Blair's government obviously was the big landslide victory for Labour back in the day in the 90s. And he was business secretary in that government. And what has emerged is, so even before stuff started to come out in the basis of the latest batch, we already knew that there was something off with Peter Mandelson and Epstein, because it had come out that Peter Mandelson was basically friends with Epstein, certainly before the conviction. But then it turned out that he had stayed friends with Epstein after the conviction in 2008. And so he had actually stayed around his house. And this came out, was a scandal for years. And people were basically really upset. So everyone was really surprised when Starmer appointed Peter Mandelson to be ambassador to America, because people were like, but this guy, hung out with Epstein, stayed in his house.
Because I'm like, Starmer couldn't have been like, oh, I had no idea, right? Like he can't feign ignorance here, because so much time has passed in between when we knew Epstein was a child trafficker and a pedophile and their relationship. There's no way that he could have been like, oh, oops, I had no idea.
Yeah, 2019, we Epstein, he died. So everyone knows that happens. Come out.
Right.
So Starmer's there. He's pointed this guy. So it's weird because everyone's looking at it, and the feeling at the time was like, ew, why are you pointing this guy? And he's come out, he's apologized and said, look, his thing was at the time was, I knew Epstein, but I was never close to him. And yeah, I stayed around his house, but that was a mistake. And I think the lesson here for everyone is really simple, actually.
Stay at your own fucking house.
If you stay at the house of a convicted pedophile, this says something about you.
Yeah.
That's really simple. It says something about you. Guaranteed something's going to come out about you. Because if you are out of a moral caliber that you think that's fine, there's something wrong. Now, I don't understand. So obviously people are really upset now that people are saying, how the hell did this happen? Now what's emerged is that, his relationship with Epstein, from the files that come out, was beyond just staying over a few times. But he was sending him information inside, and this was crazy. Like back in the 90s, Gordon Brown is prime minister. He's having problems in his government. And Peter Mandelson is sitting there emailing Epstein. We're like, what the hell? What's going on? I was a kid back then. I'm thinking, apart from you've ruined my recollection of history, but it's like, he's emailing, he's sending Epstein insider information about what's going to happen in the government. Wow. Epstein knew before everyone else that Gordon Brown was going to go. Epstein knew all about stuff that was going to happen, government policies that were going to be done on the economy that he could then take away and do insider trading on if he wanted to make profit. So there's now criminal investigation into what Peter Mandelson was sharing that was confidential government stuff with this convicted pedophile. So there's all of that. So that's all blown up. And on top of that, all this other detail about the depth of his relationship, the images that we've seen, which all show that multiple times he was there, hanging out, not fully clothed. What the hell was he doing? And then also turns out that there's receipts which show that he received money, his partner received money, tens of thousands of pounds from Epstein, years on after. It's astonishing.
Nafeez, does he make it through this, or do you see him being forced to resign?
I think we're seeing the end of the Starmer government.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a shame. In a way, it's a shame because, I'm not a massive fan of Starmer. I think Starmer is basically, there's so many problems with his government. McSweeney was kind of the epicenter of so many of those problems. But the funny thing about this is that of all the people, Starmer is probably the most cleanest when it comes to this issue. Like, he made a fundamental mistake.
It's like we're comparing filthy to.
He's got nothing to do with this stuff, and he's gonna go.
No, but
Nafeez, this is crazy situation.
Yeah.
The latest New York Times just came out that labor is uniting around him and giving him an applause, and they're trying to batten down the hatches. Just came out 30 minutes ago in the New York Times. But didn't Starmer get caught up business-wise? Wasn't there a meeting at Palantir's that was set up through Mandelson?
So here's the thing. Mandelson didn't just sit there and send stuff to Epstein. He also facilitated the entry of Epstein's business partner, Peter Thiel, into the UK at scale. So we all know Peter Thiel is basically like, he is the actual Antichrist and he's taking over the world. And Palantir is his all-seeing Antichrist eye, which he's doing that with. Palantir is, for nerds, Palantir is the all-seeing stone from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So he names all his companies things from. He takes the bad things in Lord of the Rings, then he names his companies after them. You can't make it up. So Palantir is actually that all-seeing eye. So he might actually be, for the Muslims, he might actually be the Dajjal, the one-eyed Dajjal. Maybe it's him. Just putting that out there. Maybe we should do some research, look at the Hadith, and our Jewish and Christian colleague can also get involved, and we can do some research. Maybe we'll find something out, but we can tell the world. That's half a joke. Only half a joke. But so Palantir now has some. There was a study there was a really great story by our colleague Carol Cadwallader, brilliant British journalist. She exposed something like $600 billion worth of contracts. Someone else exposed is actually 600 million worth of contracts, and someone else exposed it's nearly $1 billion. It's like 900 million. So there's nearly $1 billion worth of contracts with the UK government, and these are all highly sensitive. National security, the Ministry of Defence.
Well, this is
our nuclear arsenal. Palantir has access to.
This is the map that we showed on Friday that has Peter Thiel in the middle, and it goes through Washington D.C., Silicon Valley, and the UK, and all of the tentacles. So it's like when you layer Epstein's web on top of Peter Thiel's web, it's like this superimposition of monster. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Daniel, I'd add Israel and Russian intelligence.
And Russia.
And Peter Mandelson, this guy who's right at the bottom there in the middle, he's the one that essentially, through his lobbying firm called Global Counsel, Palantir was his client since around 2018, I think. And so he essentially facilitated Palantir to come in. And one of the instrumental inflection points for Palantir was this pivotal meeting where Keir Starmer goes to America, and he meets Trump and all this stuff. But along the way, he goes to the Palantir offices and he meets Peter Thiel and he meets all these people. So that's all organized by Peter Mandelson. So now we know that Peter Mandelson has gone, and it's been like, we shouldn't have done this. Why are we having an Epstein accomplice, in government? It doesn't make sense. So they had to go. Then they realized, well, wait a minute, who is it that advised Peter Mandelson in the first place? Who advised Keir Starmer and government that Peter Mandelson would be there? It was Morgan McSweeney. So Morgan McSweeney is Keir Starmer's chief of staff. He's also his kind of campaign brain. He's the guy that's been credited with leading the successful Labour landslide campaign that got Starmer where he is. So Morgan McSweeney now comes out and says, okay, I'm taking full responsibility. It was my idea. I'm the one that told government we should do this. I'm going to go. But of course, everyone's also wondering that, wait a minute, if Peter Mandelson's gone and then Morgan McSweeney's gone and Morgan McSweeney, he comes out and says, this was wrong. You're going to think, yeah, but who was the guy that appointed him? And who else was involved in that decision-making process? So, now the number 10 communications chief dude has also gone. So that the government's kind of like, so there's people are dropping like flies. So everyone is now wondering, like, when is Starmer going to go? Now, the only thing that's keeping Starmer there right now is that Labour internally, everyone's really upset. But at some point, I think they've kind of realized that, wait a minute, if Starmer just goes, this could also be the end for Labour, because we're back in the same stuff that we've saw last few years before with the Tory parties, where everyone just starts cannibalizing each other. It's like, oh, you're like this, you're like that. You've got the inter-party kind of conflict over the leader election and all that stuff. And they realize that this is just going to be more chaos. So I think they've thought, let's rally behind him and see if we can keep him there.
That's literally what's happening right now. Folks, what's happening right now, based on what Nafeez is saying, I mean, literally today, is they're batting down the hatches. They gave him an applause. They're like, you're our guy. And they think they can satiate the masses with the head of McSweeney and Mandelson. I don't think so.
Here's the thing. That if Starmer wanted to do more than satiate the masses, but actually deal with this thing, what he would have to do is put his hands up and say, you know what? We fucked up so badly that I'm going to rip this whole freaking thing down. I'm going to have a full public inquiry into Epstein and his relationship. I'm going to roll back. Well, I'm going to roll back Palantir's billion-dollar contracts with the UK government and get rid of all of those. It's a national security risk. He basically said, I'm going to go to town on the royal family and find out what the hell was going on over there.
Yep.
If he's serious
about saving his job.
Saving his job, but also doing something about what's happened here. Because the reason he was able to appoint this idiot who was associated with Epstein in this way is because the entire system is so self-mind fucked that no one could see the obvious, that you cannot work with people who are associates and accomplices and friends and acquaintances with a convicted sex offender. Just, you don't do that. And so we have this culture that's there. Now, if Starmer wanted to be serious about this, he would say, you know what? I've done some soul searching on this. And it's not just about me and my job. It's about everything. And I'd go to war. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that.
Because where is his money vested? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, again, there are some people that are a part of this nefarious and grotesque web sheerly for the money and the power associated with it. Then there are others that have their links and their desires around pedophilia and sex trafficking and all of these things. It's just like, if he were to pull that back, right, he would need to have no fingerprints whatsoever. And something tells me that with the amount of wealth that he has, that he is not fully clean. He may not be as dirty as the Starmer.
Starmer's not wealthy. He's like a. So look, Starmer's background is this. So here's the thing. Here's what's incongruent with this story, right? Is Keir Starmer was chief public prosecutor when we had the big grooming gang scandal in the UK, which was a real thing. Not in the way that people have gone mad about it and said only Muslims are rapists, which is
Elon
insane.
Musk.
But of course, there was a grooming gang problem. And in the areas that we had, there was overrepresentation of certain ethnicities. It was an issue. It so happens that due to population realities, most rapists and sex offenders in the UK are white. This is not a racial issue. But the fact is that in these towns and cities, there was an overrepresentation of particular ethnicity and particular groups. And Starmer was one of the people who was leading the charge against that, right? I think it's unlikely. I don't think he's corrupt in the sense that he's got his fingerprints, and he's a lawyer. He's made some decent money. He's definitely part of an elite class in that sense, and he's made lots of money. He's made a reasonable amount of money, but he's not rolling in it. That's not. I don't think that basically he is part of the same networks that Epstein was moving in. That's what makes this whole situation even more slightly disappointing, because I think as a voter here, as a British voter, I would say people voted to try and have an alternative for the last 13 years of madness under the Conservative government, and what we've got instead is what we've seen instead is a government that, despite some of the things being okay, has revealed itself to be capitulating to power.
Can I bring it up? I think this quote explains it all, and I want to go back to this quote. I think you had it up there. It's the Lady Victoria Hervey quote, ex-girlfriend of Prince Andrew, and I just want to read her quote. This is what she says. Give me 1 second.
I have, and I actually have her saying it. But
have? Okay, play it. Just play it, because I think this explains everything.
Let's see if it'll play.
It's so on the nose. It's so disgusting, Nafeez, but I appreciate her honesty, because it explains the Epstein class, a global network that is incestuous, blind to its own abuses, craven, willing to indulge in all its appetites. And folks, I want to repeat this. As Nafeez is saying all this for the past hour, thank you, Nafeez. We kept you a bit longer because it was so fascinating. We'll let you go in a minute, I promise. These people hung out with Epstein after he was a convicted pedophile, after he was a registered sex offender, and none of them cared. I could read the quote if you don't have her.
No, I have it. I was just waiting. Hold 1 second, because that's what happens to me when we have multiple people.
Prince Andrew's ex-girlfriend, folks, because of course, lady.
Anything but.
Everybody that was very powerful. So like if you were on the scene and you were powerful, like to be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult, because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Right. So the people who aren't in the files are losers.
Yes.
Okay. Are you in the files?
Well, of course I am, because it's any journalist that wrote about it.
That's an astonishing attitude, isn't it? You're the loser because you're not in this. I find that jaw-dropping.
I don't even know what you say to something like that. That is just to turn this into something that you would want to brag about, that makes you somehow noticeable and powerful, is, I mean, it's so beyond the pale. It is so disgusting. And this was Prince Andrew's ex-girlfriend. I mean, she looks a little old for the types that he clearly likes to rock with. But like, my God, please, Nafeez.
I think this is it. This is what we've just heard, gives us exactly a window into the mentality of this elite network which surrounded Epstein, which demonstrates this institutionalized level of 0.01% debauchery. That's what we're talking about, and that's what's being covered up here. It's not possible for sex trafficking on this scale to be taking place, with all these elite networks kind of engaged and involved, and no one has the slightest idea what's going on. People clearly knew, and that's what's at stake here. That there are elites who are extremely worried about how far this goes. This is only half of the files. What's in the other half?
Correct.
And this is the thing that I keep saying, is like, this is what they want, what they were willing to let us, the public, see, and it is disgusting. So can you imagine
from a murder, Danielle?
So can you so can you imagine what they are not sharing?
If you listen to what the victims are saying, the victims are saying that what's been released has been pointless, because all it's actually done, you actually find that there's images and video of victims they've been compromised. They've put they're already been traumatized. horrifically in a way that's
re-traumatize them.
unbelievable. And now their stuff is out there, but there's nothing in these files that can be used to prosecute his accomplices. And they were hoping that these releases would help them, because obviously they've got no support. But they were hoping maybe from these files there'll be something that comes out that we can use in our legal cases to put these people in jail and get accountability. We've had completely the opposite.
Nafeez, before we let you go,
Yeah.
just to bring it full circle, Danielle, do you have that video of the survivors? Can we play that? This was released during the
This
Super
was
Bowl.
released during the Super Bowl. Yes. Let me see. 1 second.
And Nafeez, as Danielle gets it, can you shamelessly promote yourself? And we kept you much longer than we promised, but
Yeah.
people have been
Yes.
asking how they
Well,
can
if you're
support you, how they
interested
can read you.
More about the networks that we're talking about. If you can get my book, it's called Alt-Reich, the network war to destroy the West from within. If you go to alt-reich.com, you can buy it directly from the publishers at a discount, and we pretty much distribute it all over the world. Otherwise, I'm on the usual platforms if you want to follow my work. And also check out our magazine, bylinetimes.com, and subscribe and support our work. We're constantly doing original exclusive investigations, and we've been breaking loads of these Epstein stories as well, which actually a lot of people aren't breaking the same stuff in the mainstream that we're breaking, but it's getting out there.
All right, let me play the video.
After years of being kept apart, we're standing together.
Standing together.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
And just today, Ghislaine Maxwell refused to answer Congress's questions about the men she helped traffic and abuse, and her lawyer hints that she'll only talk if Donald Trump grants her clemency. That happened today. She pled the fifth before the House Oversight Committee. Thank you, Nafeez. We kept you much longer, bro.
That was
You're
fantastic.
awesome. Come back
Thank you.
anytime, man. Thank you so much. Salams to the family. And once we have this up, we'll link to your book and also the fantastic journalism you've been doing.
Thank you both. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Jar.
All right, take care. Folks, that was Nafeez Ahmed, and we're going to come back to America, or rather the Americas, and we're going to end on, I think, a hopeful note, a powerful note. And I don't care, Danielle, I said this yesterday. I don't care about MAGA's rage. I don't care about their freak out. I'm sick and tired of placating their bad faith outrage. I don't care about their piece of shit, trash, counter half Super Bowl show where Kid Rock was lip syncing and grabbing his crotch. I don't care about their mayo sandwiches. I don't care about the fact that they hate everything in the world. I don't care about their shitty culture. I don't care. What I want to talk about is Bad Bunny, and one of the top 5 Super Bowl shows that I've seen in my lifetime, where everything was very intentional, deliberate, layered. And it was, if last year we saw Kendrick use the Super Bowl halftime to reveal, to show, to celebrate the story of Black America in Los Angeles, we saw this with Bad Bunny. It was very deliberate celebration and uplifting of Puerto Rico, but not just Puerto Rico, of all of the Americas.
All of the Americas.
And furthermore, it was very deliberate, very political, just like his music, very anti-colonial, a middle finger to colonization, and celebrating decolonization through salsa culture music. That was literally the quote that he said during his historic Grammy win, the first full-length Spanish album to win Album of the Year. Bad Bunny is the world's most streamed Spotify artist. That's what he said on the Grammy stage. That was there at Levi Stadium. And then when he did the football, it was This Is America, but it was all Americas. He gave a shout out to Puerto Rico. He gave a shout out to the Caribbean. He gave a shout out to Venezuela. He gave a shout out to Central America, Latin America.
Haiti.
Yeah. And there were all these people dancing and having joy. I thought it was fantastic. And this is Dr. Martin Luther King's daughter, Bernice King, saying, "Be love." Your take, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, one, I was very much anticipating this show when it was announced for all of the reasons that you just stated. I think that one, Bad Bunny gave a geography lesson last night and gave a lesson in the fact that America's time is done. And I mean, the United States of America's time as being the empire, as being the center of the world is done.
Yeah.
And when he said, "God bless America," and then began the roll call of all of America, including the United States and Canada and Central America, South America, etc., it was extraordinary because you realize again the tentacles of colonization, this idea. And I'm now thinking about it, and I never thought about it before, and I think that I'm pretty fucking conscious, is the fact that Puerto Rico is the oldest colony in the world. And that, like, why isn't Puerto Rico sovereign? Right? Why does the United States still hold power over several nation states that have no voice and no representation inside of our government, and as it pertains to like electing a president? And so when you really think about it, and again, we look at the UK and how the UK, right, had granted independence to their other colonized entities, and you look at America, and America has never been looked at as to why are you still like the overseer of these other nations. I think that what Bad Bunny did and what he is doing as a fantastic representative of Puerto Rico is like opening up all of our eyes to asking that very same question, which is the why of it all.
Yep.
And to really think about the fact that again, America has been the center of the universe for like the last 250 years, and its time is done. And in so many ways, in more ways than one, and in the fact that demographically, white people are in the minority globally. Right. And that was the other thing that I took from the roll call rundown, which is that this whole what Nafeez just walked us through, right? With like this intricate web and and based in this white nationalist ideology is also in reaction. They are moving in reaction to the global demographic shift,
Yep.
right? Like that we, people of color, right? Black people, people of color are the global majority, right? And if you have if you have democracy, then it means that, right, that these nations are going to begin to rise up. Like, and everyone else's time has kind of reached its peak. So I thought it was extraordinary. I thought it was beautiful. Because of his Grammy win, like I'm late to the party. I've listened to that album on repeat multiple times. And it is honestly, it is striking. And I was so proud. Proud is not even the right word. I thought that his display of unity, his message of love and humanity, was more important than any overt abolish ICE statement that he did make on the stage at the Grammys. That was even more powerful than that. But that is my interpretation.
And also, I'm glad you brought it back to Epstein, because it's something we've been saying on Democracy-ish ever since we started. People thought we were crazy. We talked about white supremacy. We talked about racism. We said the entire core engine of this project, Danielle, is white nationalism and white power. And people are like, it's economic anxiety, racial trip up, racial flare up. Read the Epstein files. At the end, what connects all these people is a desire for power, specifically white
power.
Yep. Right? It's the death rattle of white supremacy that has turned into a death march. If they can't share with the rest of us, they'll burn it all down. Literally, they will burn down everything. That was the goal of Epstein. That's currently goal of the oligarchy and the Trump administration. If we can be in control, none of y'all can be in control, especially you blacks and browns. And what Bad Bunny shows is actually we can all participate in the community salsa. We can all participate with joy. We can have a wedding. We can have celebration. You can have, ice cream cones. Everyone can dance. There can be a North America, Central America, Latin America, right? All of us are invited. And he literally says what's even more powerful than the message of hate, which is MAGA's message, which is Trump's message, is love. So it was a very deliberate, intentional rebuke of everything that Trump and MAGA stands for, but done in a proactive way, in an uplifting way. And literally, think about it, Danielle. Who would be offended by this? If you're offended by this, which they are,
that's right.
You are telling on yourself.
You're telling on yourself because, and I think that again, that was the beauty in, and this is why I say that art and artists in all of their forms are so important, particularly in this moment, because you have the opportunity to deliver the messages that you and I try and deliver very straight with facts and to the point in the most beautiful way, which is through music, right? Which brings us like all together and all closer to one another. And if you are against this, the only thing more powerful than hate is love, then you have told on yourself. And maybe this is not the country for you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that is honestly, that to me was the message. And that's why I think it was more important than an abolish ICE, which leaves it to be political. This was a humanist message. And I think that's
very hard to be, and they're telling on themselves. I mean, the last thing I'll say, they're freak out. They're telling on themselves. And this is the thing, Danielle. I think what the power of culture, and we've talked about this often, right? How politics is downstream from culture. Do you want to be part of that? The analogy that you and I have given. Do you want to be part of our community barbecue? All the beautiful people, all the diversity,
all the flavors, all the food,
the flavors, the buffet that goes on. Right? The different music. Do you want to be part of that? Or do you want to be part of this miserable culture of anger and rage and Megyn Kelly and Kid Rock, and they hate everything. They're afraid of everything, right? And not only that, now they hate American Olympians. Like American Olympians are very muted in their kind of criticism, and they're saying, there's a lot of trouble in America, and that doesn't represent us, but we represent what America should be. And they're using their platform, and I don't know if you've seen now, Danielle.
Many of them are using their platform to say that it is very conflicting to hold up the American flag and to represent America in this moment, but that many of them are representing their families, their coaches, their communities, and the people that got them to that place. But to hold the flag is to hold a very heavy weight right now, which is a lot of what the Winter Olympians have said.
And what does MAGA do? They're actively rooting against American Olympians for the most subtle criticism of Donald Trump. That's a cult. And I think this is where culture is powerful. There's about 130 million people who saw that Super Bowl. I think MAGA's hyperinflating the numbers for their Super Bowl halftime show. Let's say 5 million. If you're a kid, Danielle, a young adult, do you want to be part of the coolest party, or do you want to be part of the Kid Rock party? You tell me.
I mean, I want to be part of nothing that Kid Rock touches because he looks like he smells and he's gross. But like in all honesty, like he looks like slime. But no, 135, I think, million, because he beat Kendrick's viewing by I think 2 million.
Wow.
Bad Bunny drew in at the time. Kendrick Lamar last year was the biggest audience for similar reasons. People wanted to see what was going to be the message. And I think, the biggest joke that I saw watch as we closed out today was that they're like, Kendrick's performance was in English and people still didn't fucking understand it. So they're like, so don't
That's
talk
actually
to me.
a really good point.
Yeah,
I remember
so don't talk to, right? We did a whole fucking rundown and breakdown of what Kendrick Lamar's symbolism and message was on Democracy-ish last year. We did it. And so when people said, like, why are you concerned about whether it's in Spanish or English? Because either way, like, it will go over a lot of fucking people's head anyway.
But that's so funny because I remember we did that show and
Yeah.
I was watching social media and there were people like, you know what? I didn't understand it, but I dug the vibe. And then this year, the same thing goes, I don't think I understood a word, but that seemed like a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah.
And then you compare it to what that was, folks. That's what we've always said. I gave the analogy in this book. The book ends that way. I said, you know, join our multiracial, multicultural barbecue, right? It's more fun. It's more delicious. The women and the people are much better looking. Your kids will have a great time. There'll be pets. There'll be elders. That is the America that we want to create. That's the only way America can survive. There's no other way. There's no other way, folks. It's the most diverse country on earth. You either stretch and expand and include all of us. You don't have to agree with everyone. It's impossible. But you say, you know what? I might not agree with Danielle on a few things, but she has a right to live and thrive and live her life and enjoy her coffee. I might not agree with everything Waj is saying, but he has a right to drive his Honda Odyssey minivan. And, you know, I get to do my little salsa in the corner as well. Or do you want the monoculture of these pedophiles, these rapists, these eugenicists, these racists, these people with misery and cruelty in their hearts? And the last thing I'll say is, Danielle, think about it. They have everything. They have money, they're still not happy. They have all the women they want, they're still not happy. They have all the toys, they're still not happy. They have all the power, and they're still miserable because their soul is missing something. It's missing love, humanity, and compassion. So, yeah, you have two visions, folks. Look at the vision of the people who are miserable despite having everything, and look at a guy like Bad Bunny who came from very little, humble origins, now is the biggest streaming star, and then decides to use his platform to share with the world. Which one would you rather be?
Yeah. You know,
Danielle, promote yourself.
Oh, yes, I will. Folks, I really thank you, Waj, for bringing Nafeez to Democracy-ish today. It was a really great, rich, eye-opening conversation that we got to have with him and got to bring to everybody in the Democracy-ish audience. Folks, I am back tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern with the Danielle Moodie Show. And this week is just going to be jam-packed. I believe that there is just a lot that is going to be to unpack. So, you know, join me tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern. And, you know, folks, again, this is independent media. We survive on the power of the people, on all of you. Like, comment, and subscribe. Waj and I keep all of our content free, but, you know, double check, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you're subscribed to Waj's channel. If you have the ability to become a paid supporter to the Left Hook, and on Substack, and to the Damn Digest also on Substack, please do so. And, you know, I want to thank quickly Susan, as always, coming in strong all day long as our fantastic moderator, but also dropping coins into our plates, our offering plates in the middle of nowhere, as always. Kern, thank you we got some pounds and euros today. Appreciate you, Nono. Appreciate you, Jules, Susan, PJ coming in big as always, $49.99. Appreciate all of you. Waj, where are you? All over the place for the rest of the day.
2 p.m. Glenn Kirshner's on. We're going to talk about
Glenn.
Yeah, we're going to talk about accountability, how we can see it in America for these horrific people, not just in the Epstein files, but also the attempt by Donald Trump to take over our elections, folks. I think it's pretty big news. Glenn is a former prosecutor. And then at 3 o'clock, there's another guest coming, and I have a complete brain fart. I have forgotten who's.
Waj got so many guests coming in, he don't remember.
I literally, Danielle. Usually my memory's pretty. I have no idea, but I know someone's coming at 3 p.m.
and they're very important. So everyone, make sure that you head over to the Left Hook in 20 minutes, for Waj and the fabulous Glenn Kirshner.
Oh, Lev's coming on. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Lev is coming on because of the another really huge piece of news, Danielle, that in normal times would be the news. What is Tulsi Gabbard hiding? What is the massive national security threat that she has under lock and key? Why did Susan Wiles, the chief of staff, not talk about it? And what we found out from exclusive reporting over the weekend is that a foreign intelligence officer was in contact with someone close to the Trump administration. What country? What was discussed? And what was such a threat that no one's talking about it? What are you hiding, Tulsi and Susie Wiles?
It's almost as if somebody warned us about Tulsi Gabbard and we just ignored her. And
maybe that
didn't-
country might be Russia.
Right.
Sorry.
Maybe just
I
an
don't know.
idea. All right, folks, we are finished. We're out of here with Democracy-ish. Please make sure that you head over to the Left Hook at 2 p.m. and at 3 p.m. and come back over here at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Danielle Moodie Show. We appreciate every single one of you. We're going to have a jam-packed week. I feel like lots is going to be happening. So make sure that you tune in with us midweek on Wednesday for a midweek check-in, and then back on Friday for Democracy-ish. Take care of yourselves, dear friends, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist.